because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are. And we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Hello and welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a movie podcast, and I am your host, Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we're talking about a movie, a 1993 movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer. This is a movie that is about a chess prodigy named Josh Waitzkin, and he is trying to sort of find his way in chess while being surrounded by a bunch of kind of semi-overbearing adult figures who are serve as mentors to him. And he's also in the shadow of Bobby Fischer, trying to sort of find his way through the chess world and exploring his talents and nurturing his talents. This is a movie that I love from my childhood. I don't know if I saw it in theaters or anything. But
you would have been like 9.
Yeah,
yes?
Something like that.
Okay.
And I mean, I think I saw it.
It's a really good age for it.
It works really well for a 9-10-year-old. That's around when I saw it. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, I think I do want to say that I independently was into chess. So I think I was into chess, and I think that's how I found this movie. I don't know. It's a movie about like a little kid who's into chess. Like that's my jam. And, I just really, really enjoyed it. Watching it today in 2020 with a child, it's a completely different watch. I mean, of course, back then I watched it from the perspective of young Josh Waitzkin, who's 7 in the movie. And just all the experience that he has going to chess tournaments, which I had. I did go to a few chess tournaments, going to hockey tournaments for me, playing hockey. He plays baseball. I didn't live in Manhattan, but
this is a very New York movie in a lot of ways.
And I think in a certain extent, I didn't even understand Manhattan and the geography of Manhattan and how close they are to Washington Square Park. But anyway, that's beside the point. I mean, I watched all this stuff and I just identified so much with the kid. I mean, of course, he's like really good at chess and I was mediocre at chess, but I still sort of fancied myself like able to get good at chess if I worked at it.
Sure, of course.
And then I never really did. I moved on. But yeah, this movie like had always sort of felt like it was a part of my childhood growing up. And it's a movie that I don't think many people have seen. It's a movie that I think I looked at the box office. It didn't make very much money. It made like $7 million at the box office. And I think it was roundly forgotten.
I had no idea this movie existed until I met you.
Yeah. And I think you're not alone in that regard. I think that this movie is largely forgotten to the sands of time. It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's a really straightforward movie. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think a lot of people see the poster or whatever, or the synopsis, and they think, oh, this is going to be like a shitty, kid overcomes obstacles kind of movie, and like a less funny version of, I don't know, Mighty Ducks or something. But the thing is, it's so well done. I don't know.
Like
I really,
Air Bud.
Yeah, like I mean, it is a sports movie, and we'll get into that. But I do think that this is a movie that really, I don't know. It just even though it's so straightforward and so of its time in terms of the production and everything, how it looks, how it sounds,
it's
the score,
nuanced though.
Yeah, it's really deep. It really, I don't know. I feel like there's a level of care in this movie that wasn't really present in a lot of the movies that have been forgotten of this time, of the kind of mid 90s. And I mean, it's a movie that, rewatching it now, getting this perspective of the parents and actually seeing that, oh, I see. The movie is from the perspective of the parents. I mean, it's written by the dad, Fred Waitzkin.
It's based off of a book that's written by Josh's dad.
Yeah.
The screenplay is not written by Josh's dad.
The screenplay is written by Steve Zalian, who is a Scorsese regular collaborator. He wrote The Irishman and stuff. Okay. And he also directed it. And it's interesting. He hasn't really directed very much.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
definitely a parenting movie. I mean, the whole movie, I think you do get a little bit of Josh's perspective, but primarily I think the perspectives and the conflicts certainly are adult conflicts. So it's interesting that, I mean, that you keyed in so much to it as a kid, because I feel like there's not a lot of kid stuff in it. Actually, it's kind of an adult movie, strangely, for having a kid at the center of it.
I mean, although I think I will say a lot of this stuff is, it actually flits between the two perspectives, I think, quite well, because you see the pain and suffering of young Josh, and also the excitement initially, right? When he first sees the chess, right?
It's like a love scene.
Yeah,
like when you like a love at first sight.
He's playing with his friends in the park, and then he like goes to retrieve a baseball, and he finds the guys playing chess, and it's all shot with long lenses, extreme close-ups, and it's just it's like you're watching someone's eyes go from one part of the scene to the other, and just everything that he's taking in, and he's just fascinated by it. And I love that it sets up this like conflict, right? Which I think is a somewhat universal conflict. That is the conflict between like, what are you going to be interested in? So it's like baseball or chess, and Vinny, played by Lawrence Fishburne, has a baseball and he wants the chess piece back. And you think, oh, they're going to exchange. And then he doesn't, right? He doesn't, Josh doesn't give him the chess piece. He's got it later when they're looking for a baseball to fit in the glove. And I think that sort of sets up the one of the fundamental conflicts in the movie, which is, how is it that you can have a kind of well-rounded, normal in a certain way, upbringing /childhood, while at the same time actually focusing and nurturing the talents and hobbies and interests that you have. So on the one hand, you want to be well-rounded, you want to have lots of interests and pursue lots of things, because most of us aren't going to be chess champions, right? Most of us are just going to be fine at what we do. But on the other hand, it's a virtue to go deep and to really take seriously the interests that you have. But that's this conflict that Josh faces. And it's a conflict that's most acutely faced by his parents and his mentors in how to sort of structure his life and allow him the opportunities to go into, deep into chess, but also at the same time have friendships and other hobbies outside of chess, baseball in particular, and so on.
I definitely resonated with the adults, I think, the first time I watched it, because I watched it as an adult. And this time round, I was really feeling for the parents. I was thinking of it as like a sports movie, but not as chess as the sport, but as like parenting as the sport.
Yeah.
Because the character of Fred, the dad, Joe Mantegna, he has like his own little arc, and where he loses his way and his own dip, and then he figures out how to parent right, and corrects course. So I feel like, there were times where I was like yelling at the screen. I was so mad at him for not parenting the way I wanted him to parent.
It's
but I also feel how hard that is for him, and how hard it was for him and Bonnie, his wife, to navigate that. I think, when our kiddo is old enough to have passions, it's going to be tricky, I think, to walk that line.
I think what I think is so interesting is that it's not obvious.
No.
So I do think that, the movie takes a stand, and ultimately it takes the stand that like, there's a way to kind of have it both ways, but it ultimately is conceding that he's not going to be a chess genius. He's actually going to have other interests, and he's not going to become this hermetic little chess computer who just studies chess and does nothing else. He's going to
There's an example of that in the movie.
Right. There's a contrasting character.
There's another child that has been sort of like raised in like a chess petri dish.
Yeah. But I think the movie sets it up very blatantly, like, this is the right way. But I do think it's complicated, because I think, most instances of, quote unquote genius at whatever, just the people who are the top at what they do, they have to basically singularly devote themselves to that from a very young age. So think of all the classical musicians, all the best classical musicians. Think of all the best athletes for the most part. The people like Jordan and LeBron, like they are singularly devoted to the pursuit of the mastery of their craft in a way that requires, I think, a lot of at a young age, a lot of parental oversight, right? That helping keep them on the track, providing for them so that they can pursue it, and then ultimately, encouraging it and not just stepping back and saying, "Hey, maybe you should have other interests," right? It is a kind of thing which does require parents to be like, "I see you're really good at this. I'm gonna nurture that talent by keeping you going when the flame kind of burns out."
Getting them back on the horse when it gets hot.
Yeah, when it gets hard, inevitably.
Or they don't win. Eventually, I think every kid, I mean, I think I was like singularly untalented in everything. but I think, it's when you do find that you're good at something, it's really fun. And you like sort of the first step beyond the other kids is easy, right? Yeah. And then you inevitably face some adversity. You don't win everything right away. Yeah. And that's when the going gets tough. And that's when a lot of kids are just like, well, if I'm not going to like be great at this, then like, I'll just, I'll get distracted.
I'll do something else.
And that's when the parents have to sort of step in. And it's a virtue to push past that adversity and to dig deep. But you also don't want to turn them into maniacs.
And that brings us to one of the scenes that I absolutely love, which is when Pandolfini, the chess teacher, so they bring in Bruce Pandolfini to see if he'll be Josh's chess teacher. But before Pandolfini agrees, he takes Fred Waitskin, Josh's dad, to a chess tournament.
Have you ever been to a tournament before?
No.
Oh, well, you're in luck, man. This is one of the most prestigious. The talent gathered here is the strongest in the country. Everybody's here. Joel Benjamin, former U.S. champion. Among the 6 highest-rated players in the country. Man in the corner is Roman Gingi-Hashvili. 2-time U.S. champion. A few years ago, he was ranked among the top 10 players of the world. Asa Hoffman. He's the son of 2 lawyers. He grew up on Park Avenue, went to Columbia and Horace Mann before dropping out to play chess full time. He plays about 200 chess tournaments a year. Asa. Asa. How much do you make at the tournaments altogether? About $2,000 a year?
Look at that. I got him thinking. Maybe I can win a pawn.
What is chess, do you think? Those who play for fun are not at all. Dismiss it as a game. The ones who devote their lives to it, for the most part, insist that it's a science. It's neither. Bobby Fischer got underneath it like no one before him and found at its center art. I've spent my life trying to play like him. Most of these guys have. But we're like forgers. We're competent fakes. His successor wasn't here tonight. He wasn't here. He's asleep in his room in your house.
And one of the things I love about this scene is that Pandolfini is showing Fred Waitskin what could go wrong. Like how it could go wrong. And it goes wrong by Josh getting really good at chess, but not great at chess. And he just ends up playing in a chess tournament in a dingy old room with smoke and a bunch of weird semi-psychotic people, and he's broke.
Yep.
Right? And I mean, if you think about it, like all the instances of adult figures playing chess in this movie are flat broke. Pandolfini's broke. The people who play chess in Washington Square Park are broke. Yep. They're homeless, many of them.
Yeah.
Or they're portrayed as lunatics, like they portray Asa Hoffman as a complete maniac.
I do love that that's like Pandolfini's introduction is like he's on the phone and he's like, $30. Do you know how much I'm accustomed to taking for speaking engagements? Then he's like, then they cut away to something else and they go back to him and he's like, I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, it's
tough times.
It's tough times. And it's like, nurturing the skill of an artist, right? Where you're like, ooh, it's like you're really good at this. But on the other hand, it's like
going to be a tough life for you.
Can you become good enough that you can actually, make a living at this and also succeed in the way you want to succeed? Or can you just be good enough to like scrape by?
Yeah.
And it could also drive you insane. That's the other worry, is that
there seems to be something in particular about chess that drives you insane.
Absolutely. And we'll get back to this when we get to Bobby Fischer. Because of course, in this movie in 1993, we know Bobby Fischer's a little weird. He disappeared. He's being kind of erratic during his chess tournament days, but we don't know how bad it gets. And we do know now today how bad it got and how completely insane Fischer went very quickly after his famous chess tournament with Spassky when he became the chess champion of the world. So anyway, we'll come back to that. But so Pandolfini shows the father, Fred Waitzkin, all this stuff. But then he says something which is great, which is he says, look, these guys are good. I was good. But your son has something better than all of them. He's got this innate skill. He's the potential to be the next Bobby Fischer. He's got something that we can only attempt to have. We're competent fakes. And I think that line is so compelling. And I think it's immediately compelling to Fred Waitzkin, who thinks, holy crap, this guy thinks my son could be the best chess player ever, or at least in the running. This is big time, and then he begins at that point to go down the path of pushing Josh really hard.
Yep. It feels like it's his obligation to Josh, but also like to the world,
to the chess world. I mean, that's the way Pandolfini puts it. He says, "What I want is I want to get back what Fischer took away from us when he disappeared."
And that part for Bonnie is not the mother is not compelling at all.
Mm-hmm.
She just doesn't care if the chess world doesn't get another Bobby Fischer, as long as her kid is happy. She's like not interested in that. But I do understand why that would be compelling for Fred. I wonder too. I guess the real life Fred was a sports commentator as well. But I just wonder too.
I think he was a writer I believe he was a writer for the Times or one of the New York papers.
Okay.
Sports columnist.
Yeah, not a commentator, but a columnist. I wonder too if that's part of it, that he's got like a more as part of his career, he's got this reverence for competition and for winning. Yep. But he's also always been on the sidelines.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think that idea, which of course you're right, is nurtured in sports and athletes too, that there are these like gods among people who are really good. And they're just, like the Babe Ruths or the Michael Jordans or whatever, who have this sort of supernatural ability. And as columnists, your goal very often is to play up those narratives, mm-hmm. right? Is to talk about the godlike entities, because it gets people excited about the following the sport and so on. So yeah, you're right that it was an easy narrative for him to get into. So there are a couple different conflicts. So one is between Pandolfini and the mom, Bonnie Waitzkin. And this centers around the approach to teaching him and how much Josh should be sort of trained to be a killer. Mm-hmm. In particular, there's the scene where Pandolfini says to Josh that you have to hold your opponent in contempt.
Do you know what the word contempt means?
It's to think of others as being beneath you, to be unworthy of being in the same room with you.
I don't feel that.
Well, you better start. Because if you don't think it's a part of winning, you're wrong. You have to have contempt for your opponents. You have to hate them.
but I don't.
They hate you. They hate you, Josh.
I don't hate them.
Bobby Fischer held the world in contempt.
I'm not him.
You're telling me. To put a child in a position to care about winning and not to prepare him is wrong.
Get out of my house.
This scene makes me really angry. I'm such a Bonnie in this situation.
But I mean, what do you think about Pandolfini's line? That argument that, like, you know, if you don't prepare him well, then you're just sending him out there to be destroyed.
I reject the premise that it's important to hold people in contempt in order to win. So I don't agree with that. I mean, in terms of preparing the child, I think what the kid is going to value what the parents value. And like I think when they're talking about Dalton, he's the dad's trying to convince him that it sounds great or something, and he says, "What do you think?" And the kid's like, "Well, if you say it's great, it's got to be great." His world is framed by how his parents feel about something. So if he goes to this chess competition and loses, and his parents don't make a big deal out of it and say, "We're really proud of you and you did so well and you made it so far," I don't know that he would be crushed. So I think it's more about like how they handle it and how they teach him about winning and losing than like this scenario in which he is not prepared to lose.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, what if it was part of what it took to win, to have that kind of killer mindset?
So that's the part I reject. I don't know. I mean, so I thought a lot about, we just watched we mentioned this in the previous podcast, we watched the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan definitely has that contempt.
Yeah.
It's an important part of his athleticism, his competition, and
what drives him. Yep.
Thank you. That he has contempt for and hatred and like grudges. Like I think the number of times he said, "And then it was personal for me," in that documentary were like 20 to 25 times.
Yeah.
And that there's even one scenario in which he like might have made up a personal grievance in order to like fuel that fire to win. That's Michael Jordan. And it's definitely a way that works. I don't think it's the only way that works.
Okay. So that's right. I think, you know, I do agree with you, but I do find it interesting to think about that there is this, when you look at people who succeeded beyond others, not just sort of achieved a kind of moderate level of success, but like rose to the very, very top. And a lot of them were almost psychopathic in terms of their like devotion.
Sure.
And that involved in particular in competitive things, like where you're fighting, you know, zero-sum game kind of situations like chess, or where you're directly against someone. The psychological component is a big part of it, because there comes a point, I think, you know, take boxing, for instance, which I think is a really clear analogy here. There comes a point in the match where you've got two guys who are evenly skilled and athletic, let's say. And there comes a point when they're both tired and then just one of them breaks. He just cracks psychologically because he's tired, and then he just thinks for that moment, that fleeting moment, that the other guys could beat him. The other guy's better. And then he loses because he loses. It's an internal conflict that ultimately defeats him. And I think that's a very common narrative in a lot of sports. And I think it applies to chess. I mean, you know, one thing that this movie doesn't go into that much is what a chess tournament like actually is like what the tournament situation is. It's not like one game, you know, it's many games over many days, and the games last hours. It's like a heavyweight fight that goes on for days.
Yeah, weirdly, you get that perspective from the parents' point of view, because I love that scene where they lock up all the parents in the locker room. And you see how long that like and grueling the chess matches from like just because they're in that locker room for so
they're like
long.
sweaty and
exactly, and they're
gross.
freaking out.
Yeah.
But you don't get Josh's perspective of that the stamina that's required to just play game after game after game after game.
Yeah. And I the games can last hours, and it gets to this point where you may have made a mistake and then another mistake, and then pretty soon you start to think, maybe I've just lost, and then you start to play not to lose as opposed to play to win. And I think that is very real. And I when you listen to top chess players talk about what they do to prepare and what's going on in their minds during the games, a lot of it is psychological. When you get to a point where, again, people are evenly matched, it's what is the difference? The difference, there's no luck in chess. The only difference is going to end up being a kind of psychological thing. And Fischer did this a lot. He psyched out his opponents. He sort of toyed with them. He would wait till the last second to show up to the match, and just keep Spassky on his toes. And another person who did this actually, and there's an entire documentary about this, is Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron. The entire documentary is him basically playing mind games with a bunch of the other guys, including Lou Ferrigno, for the Mr. Olympia contest. And it's fascinating, though, to see the mind games he's playing with these guys, where he has a kind of innate understanding of this. Because it's not as if Schwarzenegger was like reading psychology books or something on people. He just kind of had this innate understanding of how to like psychologically dominate another person.
That sucks. I don't like that stuff.
But fair enough. But you don't like competition. But that's that's what it comes down to.
Just be good at chess. You don't have to be an asshole.
Chess is not a game that you play by yourself. That's the thing. It's a game played against. It's a competitive game played against another person, and it is this game that it's a war game.
I think you and I are going to be just exactly gender aligned for Bonnie and Joe in our in terms our Fred rather in terms of our orientation towards our child.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I do think
I'm going to be like, just be nice to everybody. This is why I do too much trading in Settlers of Catan.
Yeah, you trade away all your good stuff.
I know.
Okay.
Anytime anybody needs some beasts, let me know.
Beast for wheat. No, I beast for chaff. That's what it is. But I actually think
always like, I got a few extra I could spare.
I think that's actually messed up because
crazy.
Because the point of the game is to compete. The point of the game is not to like be nice to people. The point of the game is if you're being nice to people, then you're just like a fickle, fairy who's granting favors. As opposed to the point of the game is to win and be to
give other people stomach aches.
Well, no,
is that the point?
To be competitive. The point of the game is to try to win. If you're not trying to win, then
I'm never trying to win when I play a game.
We don't play very many board games.
As you put it, like trying not to lose. I think I'm like trying. I just don't want to embarrass myself. Usually, particularly if there's like a multiplayer situation, I want to end up just like kind of in the middle, or maybe like second to last, or last. That's fine, but just like not like embarrassingly last. Like that's where I'm always aiming for.
Yeah. Well. So you and Bonnie are both into being a good person,
having a good heart. That's what Bonnie says. So
not holding your opponent in contempt,
not holding people in contempt. I don't think it's nice. There's a scene where Josh early on asks if Vinny, who's one of the players in the park, played by Lawrence Fishburne, he asks his mom if Vinny sleeps in the park. And then he proposes that Vinny sleep in his bunk bed because he's got an extra bed.
Yeah, he's got the extra bed.
He's like, I was thinking he could just like hang out on my bunk bed.
Yep. Well.
And Bonnie says like, you have a really good heart, and that's the most important thing.
Right. That's what she's ultimately worried, is that him going deep into chess with Pandolfini and all that is going to ruin him. It's going to destroy him as a human being.
Pandolfini's sitting there being like, you have to hold everybody in contempt. So she's not wrong if we do it the Pandolfini way.
I also love though that and this is an important aspect of the movie, is the sort of teacher student relationship that Pandolfini has with Josh, because Pandolfini's his method is born of strife and loss and failure. And he knows what it's like to be on the big stage and to lose, because you get this all that, like, of course, he must have been a chess prodigy with lots of promise, and it just didn't work out. He became a good teacher, but he was never that good. And he, it's, intimated at various points in the movie, but that he actually maybe choked in a way,
yeah.
right? Like he really failed and embarrassed himself and perhaps his teacher. And I think that baggage that he's carrying really informs how he approaches Josh, and what he feels he's kind of compensating for what he thought he didn't have, which was the kind of killer mind instinct and the contempt and everything. Perhaps because deep down, like, he's also a decent human being who couldn't actually bring himself to embody those what he thinks of as virtues.
Yeah. That's what I love about this movie, is that there are so Josh has so many different adults in his life that care about him,
Yeah.
that really do care about him, that, come into conflict with one another because they can't agree on, what's best for Josh. But I think they do want what's best for Josh. But at the same time, there's also this part of them that I think all parents feel, or mentors feel, that what's going on with their child or their mentee is a part of them too, reflects upon them. Part of the reason that I do love that scene where that I mentioned before, where they put all the parents are trying to like influence their children, trying to help their children. They're kind of talking in their ear behind them in one of these early, like, lower level competitions, and they end up getting kicked out and like put into a locker room. But there's all this kind of competition happening amongst the parents. My kid does this, my kid does that. They're just like using the children as reflections of themselves.
Yeah, it's vanity on the parents' behalf.
Totally.
They want the child to succeed where they couldn't, just like Pandolfini wants Josh to succeed where he couldn't, because then it reflects well on him as a teacher, as a parent, as a mentor, etc. They
Right.
can sort of, live vicariously through them and also take some credit for their success.
Totally. I mean, there's a silly scene where they're like at a pool, and Fred gets asked what his score is. Is that how you put it?
His rating.
His
His
rating.
ELO rating.
His
yeah.
rating. Yeah. And Fred doesn't know what that is. So he makes up a number that is actually like impossibly high.
Well, it's not actually impossibly high. He says
just very
15
high.
and
1500
meaning
and
1500. He
1500.
assumes it's 1500, which would be high for a kid of that age.
Right. He
But-
could see it on the other guy's face that the other guy is like floored. And he just lets him believe it because he just likes that feeling. He gets a little charge out of his kid being a mini genius.
Yeah,
That's not about
totally.
Josh at that point. It's just about him and his ego. So there's, of course, they all have that element too. But in the end of the day, they all care deeply about Josh and they all come together for him.
Yeah.
It's such a sweet movie.
In the end, Josh is able to kind of blend the wisdom he gets from everyone. And I think the other point of conflict here is between Pandolfini, again, and Vinny, played by Lawrence Fishburne, who's Josh's friend in the park. So Vinny's a street chess player. It's like a chess hustler in Washington Square Park. And initially, that's how Josh gets into chess. He's playing with Vinny. They become friends. Vinny sees the sort of brilliance in Josh's play and encourages him in his own sort of street chess way. And Pandolfini talks a little bit about like what Josh is learning there. He's like, well, look, these guys, he's playing, first of all, he's playing speed chess, right? So speed
Right.
chess is basically like any game of chess where each person gets 5 minutes or less. Sometimes you can play games with like 30 seconds or 1 minute speed chess
They're
games.
moving fast.
It's very fast. You're trying to beat the clock as much as beat your opponent. And so he's playing speed chess. And a lot of speed chess and hustle chess is about playing kind of radical moves that like put you in a position that nobody would have ever studied. And then you just play tactics. So it's just like, I'm going to like try to like mess with you in like 2-3 move increments. I'm not really looking for some long game, long strategic or positional game. And Pandolfini's like, look, that's great if you want to hustle the drunks in the park, but you play real chess like in a tournament, like you got to play a different game. You got to play a more classic game, positional, long. You got to sit and think about your moves, plan it out 12, 20 moves ahead, right? And he's like, can you just stop having him play speed chess in the park? But Josh really likes it. He likes playing speed chess in the park. And so he's getting these conflicting pieces of advice. And nowhere clear is that, Vinny wants him to bring out the queen early. Get the queen involved, get the queen working. And Pandolfini's like, just don't bring the queen out. Because the standard chess, like if you read a chess book, right, it'll tell you the reason you don't bring your queen out early is that if your opponent knows what's up, they can basically use crappier pieces that are worth less to attack your queen, and then that wastes time for you moving your queen around while your opponent develops a positional advantage. So it's really dangerous to bring the queen out too early because the queen's such a valuable piece, it can end up getting chased around the board. So that's why Pandolfini doesn't want him to do that. But Vinny's into it because it's more of a radical move and kind of shakes things up. And also the queen's very powerful, so it can do lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And then in the end, Josh is able to sort of blend the styles together. He ends up bringing the queen out early. He loses it, but then he uses some tactics to get the queen back.
Yeah.
And then he ends up with Pandolfini. He is able to see the checkmate, whatever, 12 moves ahead.
Then he gets a little sassy trick or treat comment.
Well, that's when he gets the queen back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so he does kind of able to blend the two. I mean, and it's also, he blends the sort of Bonnie and the Pandolfini. I mean, the trick or treat is like him holding the kid in contempt, but then when he knows he's won,
he offers
the
truce.
draw.
The draw. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know any of these chess language things. You're gonna have to explain.
He offers the draw so that they can share he says we'll share the victory. And
he's such a sweetie.
He doesn't hold him in contempt. He sees him as an equal and he wants them both to win. And the kid refuses the draw. So plays out.
Poor kid. That poor kid with his IZOD shirt. He's wearing the same outfit. He's got the same outfit.
I had that outfit. When I went to Catholic school.
Can I ask you a question? Were your sleeves like ruched? Because he's okay. I don't think I had seen.
I had that look. So here's why. I went to Catholic school for a semester.
Yeah. And you had your sort of bunched IZOD sleeves.
There were 3 colors of IZOD style button, whatever they are, polo style shirts that you could wear because it was a uniform. You had a uniform. And you could have white, dark, very dark blue, or red. And
that's a lot of variation for a uniform.
Well, yeah. And then you had to wear khakis.
Okay.
Khaki slacks. And then the girls literally, it was plaid skirts. It was the standard kind of.
I wore multiple plaids in my day.
And so I had the white. I had the white one exactly like what that kid was wearing.
That poor child.
Yeah, me in the chess tournament was getting defeated in the first round. Just getting destroyed. And then being like, man, I'm not good at chess. Because I never took it really seriously. I enjoyed kind of the tactical aspect of it, but I just didn't have the patience to
stamina.
Really study.
Yeah. Well, I think there is, obviously, I don't love chess. You know this about me. But if I were to love chess, I think then the way that Pandolfini wants to play it is fun too. It's a different type of exercise. No, both of them.
Both. Oh, sorry.
But on the surface, the Vinny way is more fun. Like he's a kid. It's fast and loose.
Yeah.
It's all about like the smack talk back and forth, and like you're playing loose and you're playing fast, and you like just keep going. And
it's more about lose and you come back and there's a new game. It's more
about the camaraderie, I think, and like the feeling of being in the park and hanging out with your friends, which is a totally normal thing for a kid to want to do. But he also enjoys his extremely tactical long game approach too.
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting there being Josh, I wouldn't want to do it the Pandolfini way.
Well, yeah,
that's boring.
But that
and hard.
So here's another thing.
That's Pandolfini doesn't really ever make chess seem like fun. No. He just makes it seem like torture.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So we talked about this at the top, but when you develop a hobby early on as a kid or even as an adult, whatever, and it's fun at first because you can make progress quickly usually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're young and your mind is malleable and you're able to pick stuff up and so on. So maybe you start to show some aptitude. And so then people are like, maybe you should take lessons, right? Or whatever. Maybe you should do this competitively, go to tournaments. That's when it starts to be not fun, right? Because then now you have to practice and you have to study and you have to devote and you have to lose, right? There's a lot of setbacks along the way once you get beyond the like, I'm decently good at this. Like, I'm quickly good at this thing. And that there's always this point that happens in your trajectory of whatever you're developing. And for me, I was really into guitar when I was started playing guitar in middle school, and I got really serious about it and was doing classical guitar lessons and auditioned for music school. And then I got into music school and I did a year of music school. And the only reason I did a year of music school was because almost day one of getting to music school, it ceased to be fun. And I think part of the reason was exactly this. It was that before I was just, I played guitar when I had time. And I didn't play a lot. I played many, many hours every day, but I just played when I had time. It wasn't like my job. It was just something I did on the side. But when you're in music school, it's your job. And it really feels like it's a level of pressure and expectation that I had never experienced. And so that sucked. And it was a lot of like not fun exercises.
Yeah. I think to be something good at something, it's tedious.
It's so tedious.
You have to do something small over and over and over and over again.
Yep. And I realized that I thought I was passionate about guitar. And then what it turned out was that I had a decent amount of like beginner skill and I could pull off certain things, but I was not, I was not psychologically at this stage to be able to power through what was going to be required of me, which was, they told me in day one, they were like, you're going to have to relearn how to play guitar. And I was like, what? Like, they're like, you have all these horrible habits that we're going to have to train out of you. And so a lot of my practice was posture and doing very basic finger picking exercises that were just
that sounds so frustrating.
Just super tedious, and you just use it for hours. And you're not playing a song; you're just literally just playing like a stupid scale up and down, and like, and then and then you'd go.
Sorry, I'm just like imagining you like with my first guitar lesson, like you're just playing hot cross buns over and over.
No,
again.
It was literally like I'm better than this. At least I thought in my mind, like I should be playing like actual good music. And I thought I was going to be doing that. And instead I was playing these like really sort of tedious, boring studies. And I was like, wow, this is terrible. And so I realized, that was for me, that realization came then. But I think it doesn't matter where you are. If you're going to get to a point where you're really good at something, you're going to have to break through that feeling of like, oh my God, this is really boring, And so there's that aspect. The other aspect for me was realizing there are other people who are much better. And that's brutal. And Josh experiences that with the kid he has to face. Of course, he wins, but it's that encounter with someone who you perceive as could be better than you, just could be more gifted or more devoted or whatever. And pretty much everyone in music school was better than me in every way at music. And I was like, I just was out of my league, and I realized that, these people have been playing whatever their instrument they were playing since they were like 3. And they had a deeper understanding of music than I did. And they just obsessed about music more than I did. And that was incredibly discouraging. And you have to break through that ceiling or whatever it is of confronting, not being the big fish in the little pond anymore, and nonetheless persisting through. So I think those at least are the sort of twin things. And so you have to somehow maintain that passion that you started with, even through all this adversity and through losing too. That's the other thing. You have to make mistakes and be okay with it and use that to fuel your practice to get better.
Right. Right. I mean, maybe that is where the contempt comes in, because like, for Michael Jordan, the thing that kept fueling him was, his
I'm
anger.
better than these
I'm
people.
better than these people. I have to be better than these people. I have to destroy these people.
It's an insult that they think they can have this guy guard me, so I'm going to destroy him. Or if he lost, he'd be like, I'm insulted because we lost. I'm going to come back and destroy them, right? The next game. We don't see it that much, but what is it that is contempt is fueling him for? Well, one is all the game stuff. When he's in the game, even if he's tired, he's going to push through. But or like in the flu game is the perfect example of this. Like he's basically nauseated the entire game and he's able to go out there and do it. But the other thing is it's all the behind the scenes stuff. It's all the like, now you got to do another rep and you're just exhausted and you feel terrible and you just want to go lay down, and no, you got to put in another rep, or you want to do another 3 miles on the treadmill. You're by yourself in a gym shooting free throws, and you got to do 1,000 more free throws or something. And you'd rather just be watching TV, but it's like, no, I got to do this. That's where the contempt comes in, and it pushes you, I think, to push through. It gives you that goal that you can visualize. And, I have
Do you
to
think
say,
it's just more powerful for the negative emotion, or like what is the positive emotion that could be pushing you?
It's possible that there are other ways to do it, but I just think for Jordan, it was contempt.
For Jordan,
yeah.
it's definitely contempt. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm sure, this isn't a self-help episode. I don't really know. I don't know what drives you. I mean, I just
explained how bad I am at playing Settlers of Catan. We can't do a self-help.
I'm not going
to be helpful.
Well, clearly you've, Nick, never experienced this. I mean, I've experienced it to a certain degree.
No, I've never experienced this. I've gone out of my way to not experience this.
I mean, and I've only really experienced it in the sense of having the setback and then just being like, well, I'm gonna do something else, because like it sucks.
Yeah, which I think is a totally normal and average response.
How most people will respond, and that's why there's only one Michael Jordan, and I think that's fine. I think that's great. But no, that there is one Michael Jordan is great. Like we don't need a bunch of Michael Jordans.
Definitely don't need any more.
Yeah.
I came away from the documentary not very into Michael Jordan.
Well, on Michael Jordan. I mean, the fascinating contrast, and whether there is this kind of non-contemptuous killer instinct thing that can power someone through, is so Jordan and Kobe are like in one camp, but then there's LeBron in the other camp, and I think like LeBron James seems like the kind of person, outwardly at least, his public persona is nothing like what we see in Jordan, where he feels like he's a guy who wants to have teammates and their success is his success and his success is their success. And he shares in that. It's like he has a team mentality that he's bringing to the game. Whereas Jordan was like, look, just get out of the way. Let me win this.
Yeah.
You're holding me back. If I could just go 1-on-5, I would just do it every time. And LeBron's never like that. He always is willing to pass. And often that was a criticism of LeBron early in his career, was that like, well, he doesn't have the killer mentality that Jordan did. But LeBron has had quite a bit of success in his career, and I think he's done so without that killer mentality. And I
think so too.
I think so. The question then is, well, like, what drives LeBron? I think legacy, which maybe is this positive thing, is what ultimately is driving him. He wants to be able to look back and feel maybe pride in the career that he led or something. But I mean, I think, to be fair, it's not entirely all positive, because I think LeBron is also scared. I think he's driven by a fear that his legacy won't be what he thinks it should be. So he's going to look back and he's going to say, I think what LeBron's afraid of is this. He's going to look back on his career and say, well, couldn't win a championship in Cleveland, had to go to Miami. There wasn't really any competition there. He won 2 out of 4. And then he went back to Cleveland and won 1, but then he just got steamrolled by the Golden State Warriors, who were up and coming. And then like that, the worry I think LeBron has is like, that's going to be how people describe his career is.
Yeah.
And it's not like Jordan's, where he had his younger days where he was getting everything together, and then he wins 6 championships in a row.
Yeah. I think one of the things, though, that's different too is that LeBron seems to care more about like the legacy that he had, or the impact that he has on basketball writ large, or the NBA, or like, he's got his own school. I feel like he's like interested in creating a legacy in terms of the community of basketball in the next year. Outside of basketball, outside of himself.
Yeah.
Outside of himself, I think more like, I think he's interested in like a legacy within basketball too. But like Michael Jordan was just, once he's out, he's out. It was just all about his stats, his championships, his numbers, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
When I think that was different with Kobe too, because Kobe was like a part of the NBA beyond his retirement. He's going to create a legacy for himself.
That's true.
Anyway, this is not a basketball podcast.
No, but it's interesting to compare. I mean, the other comparisons that I was thinking of were Mozart and Salieri, which is very much, I mean, you can think of this movie like Amadeus almost, where it's told from the perspective of Salieri, who's the competent fake, who's good enough to appreciate what Mozart's doing, but not good enough to understand it. And Mozart, right? The genius, right? Who just has this kind of preternatural skill who potentially squanders it, right? And then the other one is Beautiful Mind, with the story of John Nash, the Princeton mathematician who went and became schizophrenic, and his genius was tied up with mental illness. And I think that's where the specter of Bobby Fischer kind of looms large here, is that what happened to Fischer is after he won the world championship, he's basically just disappeared. He kind of just fell off the surface of the earth, didn't return to defend the title. And and when he did resurface, it became increasingly clear that Bobby Fischer was really losing his mind. He resurfaced once in the early 90s and then later in the mid 2000s, right? Something like that. And especially in that later time when he came back, he had all these conspiracy theories, and it was clear we were dealing with a very mentally disturbed individual. He had become an anti-Semite, and he thought the American government was out to get him. And anyway, so it's really a sad cautionary tale, I think, that chess is this thing, and they talk about it in the Bobby Fischer documentary, Bobby Fischer Against the World, that chess is this thing where you have to play paranoid. You have to sort of play always thinking 20 steps ahead, and there's all these branching possibilities, and you're trying to play through them. The problem is when you think of your life like that, it's very quickly gonna lead to indecision, and then ultimately potentially paranoia, because you're thinking well, if I'm thinking these things, other people are thinking these things. And no, go down this bad rabbit hole. And he just couldn't turn their mind off, and it led him down a very dark path. And that's the worry that's looming over Josh. I think that Pandolfini is concerned about at the beginning, is that he just said, maybe you just don't want this life for your kid. Maybe just say, nah, just chess in the park. That's it. And just have fun, and, risk driving your kid insane.
Yeah, these movies, like genius prodigy movies, actually kind of freak me out.
Mm-hmm.
I think about them as addiction movies.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, definitely hints at that too. When you see the chess players in that nasty room playing, but Pandolfini's just sitting this is the best of the best in this room, and you're like, this room?
Yeah.
This is not.
It's a grungy room.
It's not glamorous. That
No.
is for sure. But it just seems totally real that to be the best at something kind of costs you your soul.
Yeah.
Or at least your relationships. And how the hell can you be happy if your entire world rests on being the best at something? Because you can't be the best for long, right? It's always just
It's fleeting.
point in time.
Yeah, for anyone, it's fleeting.
There's
That's right.
always somebody younger, stronger, smarter, more creative coming up at you.
Yep.
Always.
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, that seems terrible. And also I think that necessary drive that allows you to be the best of the best seems that slavish devotion feels akin to addiction to me, and out of control and scary. That really freaks me out. And I joked about being singularly untalented in everything, and I think that is true, but I also didn't pursue anything very hard.
Right.
Because I think I was freaked out
Yeah.
at being, maybe not at being slavishly devoted to something or having something subsume me that way. I don't think I could understand that as a kid. I think what I could understand was pressure and expectations.
Yeah.
And I was when Josh says, maybe it's better to not be the best because, then you don't let anybody down. He doesn't say it that way, but
Yeah.
But I think that's how I read it, and I was definitely worried a lot about letting people down as a kid. And so I think like it's like, well, if you're just mediocre at everything, you don't set up any expectations. I'm not going to get any state championship and choke because I'm never going to get to that state championship
Yeah.
for anything. I was just like a dilettante.
I mean, I think it's a good point of view. And, but it's hard not to feel some pull towards the like, well, if it's within your reach.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is, why it is that, when it's not within reach, then obviously we're like, who cares? Like, just don't do it. Don't pursue that.
But if
you could, then suddenly you're like, I don't know what it is. It could be pure vanity. That's it. It could just be the vanity of wanting to have a certain title and have other people think highly of you because you've achieved that. I'm not sure.
No, man, I think there is, if you're really good at something, there's just a want to see, how far you can take yourself for your own, just for your own knowledge, your own self-worth, but also for, furthering chess, perhaps. I don't think Josh cares about that as a little
That's
kid.
true.
I think he
Pandolfini, though, does.
But Pandolfini does. He thinks like the world of chess will be a dimmer
better.
place.
Yeah, better with Josh.
Without Josh, and better with Josh in it.
Mhm.
That he thinks Josh can change the game again the way that Bobby Fischer did.
Yeah.
And that's important to not just, to the world outside of Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the other thing that I just keep wishing that Fred will say to this kid is that, it's okay to lose sometimes.
Yeah.
Because totally, like if something's within reach, I think you should push yourself if something was just to see what you're capable of. But if you're not capable of that thing, it's okay too. And that's the thing that's the thing that there's the scene where when Josh is expressing to his dad that he's scared, and he's saying it like, maybe I shouldn't go to this next tournament, and the dad is just saying, oh, you won't lose. You won't lose, and also they're scared of you.
You won't lose, Josh.
What if I do?
You won't.
I'm afraid I might.
Josh, they're afraid. They're terrified of you.
That's killing me.
Yeah, and what I think is so
me.
interesting though about that scene is it's perfectly mirrored in this final scene with Josh and Pandolfini.
Yes,
where he's right before the final chess match, and he's like, "I'm so scared," and I really actually thought what this kid's Max Pomerank or whatever, his performance was great. The fear in his eyes seemed totally real, and I knew as a kid that feeling of fear, and of course as I got older, I knew it all too much. And he just says, I'm just so afraid. And Pandolfini says, you might not win. Like it's like, I'm not supposed to tell you, but you might not win. And I think that is the most touching part of the movie for me, because it shows, on the one hand, Pandolfini reveals to Josh that the empathy that he has with him, and it's an empathy that only they can share.
Mm-hmm.
As teacher and student. Like, he can't share that with his parents. They don't understand. They've never been in a situation like this with this much pressure on them. But Pandolfini has. So he's able to empathize with him. And he does. But he also assures him, he's like, I'll be here. I'll be there the whole time. I'll be there when you come out. Win or lose, I'm going to be there. And that is such a oddly reassuring thing in that moment, right? To just be like, yeah, you might lose, but don't worry, I'll be here. Like it's almost like exactly what I think Josh needs to hear and wants to hear.
I can't beat him.
You might be right. I'm not supposed to say that, but you know I was lying if I said anything else. I have never been so proud of anyone in my life. I'm honored to call myself your teacher.
so scared.
I know.
You say until it's over?
Will I stay? I wouldn't miss it for the world.
As a person who doesn't like sports movies very much, I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's but it's because it's also a parenting movie. I mean, I think
Yeah.
most sports movies are also not parenting movies.
No, yeah.
Right? They're more focused on the trials of the athlete in the center of this movie, and not about the surrounding aspects of, you know, the role of the family as mentors as well, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think of it as my favorite sports movie, and you know, I do actually kind of like the genre of sports movie. I like a lot of sports movies. I like The Fighter. I like Mighty Ducks. I like Mighty Ducks 2. I mean, there's a certain cliche to them, and but when it can be done well, I think it's a weirdly, you know, a universal human story that, like, because it's about overcoming adversity. All sports movies are just about that, and facing challenge and competition. Like, these are deeply human things. No matter how much you want to escape the conflict. I mean, we are just
want to escape conflict.
Nature. We are part of nature, and nature is just a ball of conflict.
Totally.
It's a battle over scarce resources to survive. And
so I shouldn't be trading away all my beasts.
yes, that's what I've been saying this whole time. That's kind of what I've been telling you. Now you've finally realized that you shouldn't be trading away beasts for chaff. I'm like, I'll give you one chaff for one beast. You're like, I'll give you two. What is this?
I'm like, how many do you need?
Yeah, how many do you need? That's the wrong question. The right question is, give me 6 chaff.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think these movies, you know, they speak to something deeply human in us, and
of course,
I think that this one really captures an aspect of it that I as a parent now really find compelling. And one thing though, so Zalian wrote Schindler's List, starring Ben Kingsley, and that was the same year, 93.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So
I was wondering where this movie came in the Ben Kingsley oeuvre, because you'd think maybe Ben Kingsley's presence would draw a little bit more attention to that movie, but maybe not in 1993.
He had played Gandhi at that point, and
okay.
I think that Kingsley, you know, I think Kingsley was probably the biggest draw. I think really nobody else. I mean, Joan Allen was a good actress and an important one, but
but she's definitely not.
She's not at the Kingsley
star
level,
so
she's
not
Kingsley,
an Academy Award winning.
Yeah, exactly. And Kingsley, you know, is the best. I think he really does completely sort of, once he enters the movie, it sort of becomes Ben Kingsley's movie. But
totally.
Although
anyway. I am such a Joan Allen fan.
Joan Allen is great.
I think it's just because I'm like 100% on Bonnie's side in this movie the entire time. And like when she has her speeches or when she kicks out Pandolfini, I'm just sitting there being like, hell yeah. Like, I'm just so excited.
Anyway, so that's Searching for Bobby Fischer, a movie that I think we're giving it 4 thumbs up. I put 2 thumbs and 2 toes up. So
how many toes? You literally have your toes up right now.
All right, so we're gonna
I've been looking at your toes this whole time.
6 thumbs up.
No, it's not 6 thumbs up. 4 thumbs and 2 toes.
4 thumbs and 2 toes.
I'm keeping my toes down for this one.
Really?
I put both thumbs up. I think that's all it needs.
Okay. So that's good. So 4 thumbs, 2 toes up, and thanks for listening. If you want to follow us, we're on Twitter at CowsPod. But you know, you'd be among a very select few. All right. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Searching for Bobby Fischer.
If you haven't watched it, watch it.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Good.
It's fun.
It was a movie I didn't know existed before Justin, and I'm glad I know it exists.
I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd. And next week, next episode, we're going to do Vampire's Kiss, which is a movie that is pretty far from this movie.
Oh my God. It's so good. I'm going to try not to do Nick Cage impressions the entire podcast.
No. We got to do a couple.
A couple
of our favorite deep impressions,
Sure,
deep dive impressions.
Sure. But we're going to try and not do the Nick Cage voice the entire time. It's going to be really hard for us. We're really big fans of this movie.
So that's coming up next. All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.